I can do that, I guess.
You want lights on or lights off? Do I need a pencil? Yes. It's similar.
You do your presentation in the tablet.
I do not know that yet.
Oh, wait a minute, I need to know.
I'm a little bit worried about the clicker today. I have some extra clicking I have to do for some effects.
I'll let it go. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. This is the Tunguska event. I put by Asteroid Girl, aka June Forsyth, aka June Vincello. They called me Asteroid Girl at Speech today, so that's why I put that in. Okay, so some historical background. Some of the things that were happening during and around this time period. World War I, that was pretty big. 1914 to 1918. Then there was also the Russo-Japanese War right before this, from 1904 to 1905. The Russian Civil War, 1917 to 1922, as well as the Bolshevik Revolution from 1917 to 1923. And then throughout there was the Industrial Revolution, like rising in the Soviet Union. And then one that I thought was particularly important was that Tsar Nicholas II was ruling at the time when this event took place. And I think that's part of the reason why it was not as investigated, is because he cared more about the aristocracy than the common man. So I think that played a really big role into why it was not further investigated. Okay, some explanation. In 1908, something happened in Siberia. So there was 10 to 15 megatons in magnitude when it came to the amount of energy that was released. That is the equivalent of 1,000 Hiroshima atomic bombs, to put it in perspective. So a lot of energy. The object was, most sources agree that it was around 150 to 300 feet in diameter, but people disagree a lot because we don't technically have anything documented about it. It exploded 6 miles in altitude above Siberia. It ended up flattening 80 million trees that covered more than 2,150 square kilometers. And then I have some quotes from NASA saying those closest to the event reported being blown into the air and knocked unconscious and their dwellings damaged or destroyed. Fortunately, because of the low population density, very few human casualties resulted, but many herds of reindeer perished. So that's unfortunate. And then there's a lot of disagreements between sources about whether or not there were human casualties. Right now, NASA says there were not, but then there's like a bunch of other different scientific sources that say there could have been upwards of 3, but it's kind of unknown. And I think that's part of it, is because it could have been like fatalities that happened after the event due to like maybe them being knocked unconscious or like some sort of injury or something like that. And then the blast had been initially visible from about 800 kilometers or 500 miles away. And because the object vaporized, gases were dispersed into the atmosphere, thus causing abnormally bright nighttime skies in Siberia and Europe for some time after the event. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Is that a real picture?
No.
Ah.
You guys see that? Did you see my asteroid? I was really proud of that. Okay, timeline. So, it wasn't first investigated until 19 years later in 1927 by a Soviet scientist named Leonid. I cannot say the rest of his name, Kulik. But basically, Kulik brought a team of Soviet scientists on an expedition in 1927. It took them a great deal of time to get in because of the 80 million trees that were flattened. But eventually, once they got in, they found the epicenter pretty easily because all of the trees were facing away from the epicenter. And they actually, one thing that I forgot to include on the slide that I found interesting, but I couldn't actually find any of the artwork on it, is that they brought a painter with them to paint the scene. But there was no like actual, and I found the guy's like Wikipedia like profile page and all of that, and there's like a whole section on how he went on the first Tunguska expedition. But I couldn't actually find any of the artwork, so I don't know if he just decided he didn't want to paint once he got there. But so they got a bunch of like eyewitness reports while they were there, did some surveying. But there wasn't a whole bunch they could do because they didn't find any meteorite samples when they got there. So it was still kind of a mystery. And then there was more on-site investigations around 1958 to 1961, also by Soviet scientists. This provided like the first general map of the destruction. They mostly collected dust and looked at tree growth because of all of the trees that had been flattened. So they wanted to see how the area was regrowing with their flora and fauna. And then they also did a soil study, and that was really important. So they found that the magnetite and silicate spheres, first observed by Eli Kulik and then by A. Yavno, occur in small concentrations in the impact area. At the moment, they represent the only possible fragments of the Tunguska meteorite and call for further study. So that was like the big thing that they found there was through their soil study that they did. And there was a couple more in the 80s, but I couldn't find a whole bunch on those. All of it's just quite poorly documented. And then in 1999, there was an Italian-Russian expedition. It was like led by the Italians, and then they kind of had some like couple Russian people who were like going with them. But they studied the structure and sediments of Chico Lake, which was a lake nearby. Some people think that that was the impact crater. I don't know if I fully agree with that, but they also did an aerial photo survey. They collected wood, peat, and rock samples, and they monitored gamma rays during the flight there and back, as well as while they were like actively on the site. Okay, here's some things that what we know and what we don't know. So people argue a lot about whether it was an asteroid or comet. The difference is an asteroid is formed in the inner solar system. It's like a rocky metallic body versus a comet, which is kind of like people describe it as like a dirty snowball. So it's like ice and dust and rock, and it's formed in the cold outer solar systems. And then some people are like, no, guys, it's aliens. And so this science fiction writer in the 50s claimed that it was aliens. And so some people still believe that. No. Some locals think it was mosquitoes. Okay, they think there was this massive horde of mosquitoes that was there, and they got like hit by lightning, and then it did this huge kaboom. So like, I think that's my favorite theory personally because it's so absurd. There's a Russian shaman that was quoted a couple years ago saying it was actually the wrath of God. And that's why there was all of those bad conflict things following after the Tunguska event, is because it was the wrath of God coming down and like warning us. And then what we do know is that it created a massive fireball and shockwave, but we don't know like the actual cosmic body of it. And like, even though we've done so much research about it, and it was really hard to even find the research. Like, it's all very lock and key. And then I think that it was like pulverized, and that's why we had a lack of meteorite samples. I mean, we waited 19 years to go in and look for them. So at that point, they easily could have like crumbled away, and it would be a lot harder. So yeah, just not super surprising that we didn't find a lot, considering we waited upwards of 20 years. So public reaction and the result of the mystery. The main people that were affected were the Evenki people, which was a native tribe that was nearby. They talk about a second sun tearing through the sky, incinerating their reindeer, and it destroyed their encampments. So they were like basically the only people that were significantly affected by this, which is why I think the Tsar Nicholas II being the person who's ruling is important, because I think since it was just native, like a native group of people that were affected, he did not want to prioritize making sure that like everything over there was all right. And then eyewitnesses who had observed the event from a distance spoke of a fireball lighting the horizon, followed by a trembling ground and hot wind strong enough to throw people down and shake buildings as in an earthquake. So it was just super, super intense. I mean, it destroyed all of their windows for like a very, very far distance. And then I was reading about people who are related to like their grandparents witnessed the event. So they got like testimonies of some of those people. So there was one person, Nelia, whose grandfather witnessed it. And they said my grandfather, Ivan, I don't know how to say his last name, witnessed the fall. And later in the 1920s, he led the first expedition of scientists to the site. He and his family shared impressions. Everyone said it was very warm and clear that day. In an instant, the sky split into two parts and flashed red. That day, my grandfather's dad went to the river and to meet the deer. There they had two warehouses, so only ashes remained from the one that was closer to the fall epicenter. A whirlwind blew away the second one and scattered it around. So like all of their things were absolutely destroyed. But like truly they were like the main people that were affected by it. And I think part of the reason was because they were a native tribe that it wasn't as researched and looked into immediately. Some results of the mystery. NASA's majority opinion is that it was an asteroid that exploded in the skies above Siberia. Some people talk about it being like an airburst of a meteoroid or a comet. But like it didn't have a direct impact with the site is what the main thing is. And then Tunguska is now a really popular tourist site. So people like scientists will go there, and like just individuals will go there because like it's a cool mystery. And so like technically we don't know what happened, even though we have a pretty good understanding of it. And then the sense of the mystery brings a lot of financial gains to the area through the tourism. And then the area is now super regrown and recovered. So the flora and fauna is all doing perfectly well. And then it still remains the largest impact event in recorded history, which I thought was pretty cool. Some asteroid things that have resulted because of this. National Asteroid Day is now June 30th because of this, which I think is super cool. And then the other thing is now we have technology to protect ourselves from asteroids. So like NASA's DART mission, which they have had one successful test done. So NASA created DART, which uses kinetic impactor technology to alter the orbit of asteroids. And they've had one successful mission where they intentionally crashed into asteroids called Didymos and Didymorphos and successfully deflected them. So I think that's really cool that we're having some scientific advancement in that department. And then here are my thoughts. I think it was an asteroid, and I think it was a cosmic airburst. It definitely exploded above the ground. And then I think that the mystery being left slightly unsolved is both funny and helpful for the economic sense of the community. But I think the most disappointing part of it is how, like, the ruling at the time, I think heavily contributed to the fact that they didn't research it. And I think it would have been super, super helpful for our scientific advancement if they had just researched it then and there, even though I know there was a lot of conflict going on. I think prioritizing the largest recorded impact event in human history could be really, really helpful for our understanding of asteroids and comets and airbursts and all of that stuff. So those are my thoughts.
Very good tree swath.
Yes.
So which is more effective at preventing asteroid attacks like Tunguska? DART or nuclear weapons?
I mean, the scientists say nuclear weapons are currently more effective if it's a large asteroid with little reaction time, but we actually can't use nuclear weapons because of some space treaties. Even though I feel like that would be kind of funny.
It would be a blast.
It would be a blast.
Thank
Just
you.
don't use a neutron bomb. That's what I've learned.
Any other questions? So would exploding mosquitoes be a wrath of God?
I feel like a massive explosion of mosquitoes hit by lightning is most definitely a wrath of God.
I'm with you.
So yeah, I mean that's what I
The
would.
one and the same.
Yeah, what does it say?
All right, good job. Thank you. All right, nothing now for sure. And very good tree swath. Now let's stick with Russia. I know what you're thinking, and we can't escape Russia. That's. Okay, go.
Right, so I did the Dyatlov Pass incident. This is also called the Russian Roswell. And to give you some background, this was a group formed in 1959. It was for a skiing expedition on the northern Urals in the northern part of the Soviet Union. And it consisted of 8 men and 2 women, but one of the members did return home early because he felt sick. So what happened was it was led by Igor Dyatlov. I'm pretty sure he's the guy in the center. If not, he's the guy on the next slide. But they're a trekking group from a Russian university, and they went on a hike of the highest difficulty level at that time. And they established a camp on, I can't say that mountain name, but they established camp on that mountain. And then on around February 1st or 2nd, it's not entirely sure which one. They think it's the 1st into the 2nd. But they had died. And so they cut their way out of their tents by knives and fled their campsite. And it was heavy snowfall, strong winds, and there was extremely cold temperatures, which were around like -40 Fahrenheit. And they fled the campsite. And this is what their tent looked like when they found it. And they hadn't heard back from them because Dyatlov had agreed that he would send a telegram to the sports club as soon as they returned to a city called Vizhai. And that was expected to be around February 12th, but there was a couple days of extension because obviously you get hold up, you take longer, the weather impending. But on the 20th, their relatives demanded that the rescue team had been sent out. So they were sent out, and on the 26th, they found the tent. That is one of the bodies. And The tent was, there's a quote that said, the tent was half torn down and covered with snow. It was empty and all the group's belongings and shoes had been left inside. It was cut open from the inside, so nothing got in. It was more of them all fleeing out. And they found the first first 5 bodies. They were spread out from around like a mile from the camp into almost like this forest line. And they were spread out. They were maybe clothed in like underwear, a sock, maybe a shoe. They were very underdressed for the weather. And then it took 4 months for them to find the other 4 bodies. And they were found 13 feet, under 13 feet of snow in a ravine, in a creek in the ravine. And that was in the forest. So with that, it launched an investigation by the Soviet authorities. So they deemed that the first 5 bodies died from hypothermia because they were underdressed. And then one of the bodies that was found in the ravine died from hypothermia as well. But 3 of the members in the ravine died from fatal blunt trauma. And 1 victim had major skull damage, 2 had severe chest trauma, and then the one who died of hypothermia had a small crack in his skull. And they also, the ones in the ravine, 2 of the bodies had missing eyes, 1 had a missing tongue, and 1 had missing eyebrows. And they didn't have any external wounds, besides the soft tissue damage, but they didn't have any external wounds associated with the bone fractures, with the skull fractures and the chest fractures. They described it as if they had been subjected to high levels of pressure. And this led the investigation for them to report that it was a compelling natural force that caused this. But then they reopened the case in July of 2019, and they ruled it as an avalanche in 2020. It said there was the official cause of death. So what we know is that 6 died of hypothermia, 3 of fatal injuries. There was no indication of other people because there was no footsteps there except for their own. They fled their campsite on their own accord. It looks like they weren't running though, they were just walking. And they had their tent was ripped from within. They had low levels of radiation on their clothes because the 3 in the ravine, they had clothes on. It looks like it was scavenged from all the others. But they all had clothes on. And they had low levels of unnatural radiation on their clothing. But nothing was really left with that. They just said, oh, there's low levels. And then we don't know this. They never released the state of their internal organs. And it was really hard to find other information because I kept trying to see what information wasn't released about it. And I could not find anything. It's like they didn't want us to know. But yeah. And so this led the public to have very high skepticism. And it was stated in the early 1960s that families were explicitly told to stop asking questions. The authorities claimed you will never know the truth, which led to widespread suspicion that the deaths were a state secret or a covered up crime. And with the avalanche theory, the slope that they were at was less than 30 degrees, and avalanches won't happen unless it's more than 30 degrees. So a lot of people think that disproves it, but there is a slab avalanche theory where an entire slab of snow can just come down at less than an angle of 30 degrees. And it inspired various conspiracy theories. I can't touch on all of them because there's a lot. But the slab avalanche theory, catabonic winds, military activity. The military activity was supported by locals saying they saw orbs of red and orange light around that area because the Russian government was performing military tests because it was during the Cold War. So they were performing weapons tests around there. So they think that's what caused it. But it was never truly known. That was another photo of their tent. They have a lot. And so I think I think it's still undiscovered entirely what happened. I do think that, there's like two little known details. And I don't think an avalanche could cause all those wounds, like missing eyes, missing tongues, missing eyebrows. But there is strong theories that say that they kind of went crazy down in there after the pressure of the skull fractures, the chest wounds, that they started attacking each other. But they did not find their eyes or their tongue or their eyebrows, so it's kind of up to interpretation. And I think there's just too much uncovered, but obviously they closed the case again, so there's not much we can find out. So that was just one.
So what? Well, I'll see what's it after the Soviet government just said no more testing. It was 59, and they just said you can't ask any more questions.
It was like right after they concluded that it was compelling nature, like a compelling natural force, that they just told them, you can't ask any more questions, you won't know the truth.
Which of course makes everybody think something big happened. Yeah. And and then I noticed the wild Soviet / Russian tree swamp. That was very hard to find.
Oh, yeah.
You know, in the questions, yeah, that's a good one. That's an interesting one. All right, good. Give me one sec. Oh, this is fifth period, by the way. Just letting people know. Okay, I had to check. For whatever reason, the video won't work on mine. What? Yeah. I can try to resend it. We'll figure out something if it doesn't, okay? Okay. But I think we'll do Black Dahlia then. Or do you quick look?
So I did Elizabeth Short, otherwise known as the Black Dahlia case. I'll pass this around for you guys.
Wow.
On the bottom is a model of what her headstone looks like. The petals say Hollywood Dreams because she was an aspiring actress trying to be an actress in Hollywood. The petals are not generally like that on the outside. Why I did them like that is because generally that is the way she had her hair. She had it all puffy and puffed up, and people actually started drawing model Black Dahlia flowers after her like that. So, they don't have the nuts. Oh, there it is. Just kidding. So, her childhood, he was one of 5 kids. She suffered like financial hardships because her father lost a lot of money during the stock market, and there was just a lot of instability in her family. She had to get surgery when she was 15 because it was severe. She had severe asthma and bronchitis, so she had lung surgery. Her family. So his mother's name was Phoebe May Sawyer. She was born in 1897, passed away in 1992. Her father's name was Cleo Alvin Short Jr. He was born in 1885, passed away in 1967. Her sister's name was Virginia May West. She was born in 1920, passed away in 1985. Her other sister's name was Dorothea Stroller, I think is how it said. She was born in 1922, passed away in 2012. Her other sister, Eleonora Clamers, was born in 1925, passed away in 2022. Her sister, Muriel Short, was born in 1929, passed away in 2023. So I believe that these with this picture, this one, and that one are her sisters. That is her mom, and then her dad is right with her. I believe. That is the only picture I could find with family. So her father and her. her father had a rough time, and he left the family, and it was presumed that it was a suicide because he had talked about committing suicide for a long time. And then finally, several years later, Elizabeth's mom got an apology letter from him saying that he went to Florida. Elizabeth followed. She dropped out of high school and saying that Florida would be a better environment for her because she needed a milder environment for her lungs because that is what her doctor suggested because her lungs she could not breathe very well most of the time because of her asthma. Then after a while with living with her father, Elizabeth relocated again, relocating to San Diego in 1946. Her friend had asked her why she was moving away, and Elizabeth cut off all contact with her. She did not explain, and then she met a woman named Dorothy. Just after a few weeks of knowing her, moved into her house. Later explaining to her friend that she was hiding from an ex-boyfriend that she called the Black Dahlia Avenger, and then she put a genius at murder. So she was scared that he was going to kill her. And then as other men and women had been welcomed into Dorothy's house, I guess Dorothy was kind of like a safe place for people. If they were like struggling, they could move into her house and she would support them financially, physically, mentally, whatever. Elizabeth left, relocating again to Los Angeles. Short became panicked once more, resulting from a random letter that was from an anonymous person that she did not know. Events prior. So 56 minutes after her body was identified, via like sound photo, like fingerprints. The police had already had her fingerprints because she applied for a job as a clerk commissioner at Amy's Camp Cook in California in 1943. I'm not really sure what Amy's Camp Cook is, but
Is that Army?
not really sure. When I looked it up and it didn't give me any information. So, and then she also got arrested by the Santa Barbara police for underage drinking. They still had her mugshot, so that's how she was identified, or how they identified her body. She was last seen alive, dropped off at a hotel called the Biltmore Hotel at 10 p.m. She left just walking around in a panic, frantic. A woman named Meryl McBride claims to have seen her, and a few hours later, she was found dead on a sidewalk at a park. I believe at the park somewhere. Okay, this is a picture of the letter that was put in to the magazine. That was part of the letter that, or it was in the letter that Short received. And that's when she left and was in a panic, right? The suspects, no one has ever been charged for this crime, so that's really the mystery in it. George Hodel is the person that is presumed to have killed her. He had numerous medical skills. He went to medical school. The photographs, the handwriting analysis of the letter that was written and given to Short matched Hodel's handwriting. That her body, when it was found, was in a cement bag. The bottom half was severed from the top half. The bottom half was in a cement bag. So the cement bag matched the crime scene. George Milton was accused by his daughter of killing Short. There was not really much evidence to that, so he was dropped. Leslie Dillon was a mortician's assistant, and she worked right by where Short was killed, or where she is presumed to have been killed. That's a picture of her death certificate. It's very blurry, but this was the largest recorded investigation of LA history by the police. Short was 22 years old when she passed away, born July 29th, 2024. found dead on January 15th, 1947. Her body was drained of blood, severed at the waist with several shock wounds to the head and face. She had cerebral hemorrhage and mutated colon on the side of femur part. I think is how you say that. The case was closed in 1950. Likely killer. Like I mentioned earlier, George Friedel is likely to have killed Short. He has several links to the crime. His location was unknown when the murder took place, and later, he was said that he did not remember where he was at the time of the murder because he was took in for questions. His own family accused him of the murder. His handwriting was a match to the letter. He also had very good surgical skills. He was actually a surgeon. The way that Short's body was separated was a very hard procedure to do. There's a part in your back that actually has a gap and can be cut open and can be separated there, but it's a very delicate process to have done it the way he did. The body position, people are saying that it was intentional because of the way her arms were raised above her head. It was as if she was calling for help and would eventually give up. Her lower body was 6 inches to the west of her upper body, and her legs were spread wide apart. Okay, and then this is a band that had named themselves after Elizabeth Short, naming themselves the Black Dahlia Murder. They had a song that was specifically dedicated to her, and they also named themselves after her. And then those are all of the movies that are about Elizabeth. So I believe that most of them are on HBO Max and on Netflix. So if you guys are interested, my personal evaluation, this is just something that I think should not be done. The way that she died was very sad. It was also presumed to be a slow death. I'm speechless. I don't really know what to say. And then
What do you think of George Friedel?
I do. I actually watched an interview where they interviewed his own family, and his family all accused him of doing it because when they last seen him before Elizabeth was gone, he said that he was going somewhere and he didn't know when he was going to come back, and he didn't want to tell anybody what he was doing.
Yeah.
So
Any questions? There's literally a documentary coming out right now. Right.
Yep. There are different theories of why she was called the Black Dahlia, but the one that I found most common to appear was that her favorite flowers were dahlias, and she was known for her wearing all black clothing, her black beautiful hair, and she was very proud of it. So people nicknamed her the Black Dahlia, but there were also theories about the Avenger. Yeah.
Questions? Good slot. Very good. All right. Oh, good. And the value was great. Let me try one more time. Did you send it again?
No, I was.
If not, you wanna,
I sent it through again.
let me look. I think we might have to figure something out.
That's the video.
Give me 1 second, everybody. Sorry. Today's still the 22nd, no matter how many different times I look at it. 22nd.
There's a new link from the.
Yeah, I'm looking right now. Oh, you sent it on chat?
Yeah,
Here we go.
maybe. I don't know how it's.
Verifying link. Think we have something.
I did, no, I like it.
Give me 1 sec. All right, are we ready? So this is it, you'll have all the introduction, okay. You want sound?
Yes.
Sound might help. One more time. All right, here we go. Good happy fun ball reference. Very good. And so it was drought and lack of walrus tusk that market
Yeah, it
and
was drought, lack of trade, and the destruction of the infrastructure.
do we know if they just totally disappeared? Did anyone make it out? We just have no idea.
The survivors were thought to move back to it. But generally, it was just thought they mostly on land.
I heard he might have joined the Inuits too, but, and Eric the Red. So everyone got Eric the Red. Greenland really was an advertising gimmick, so that's very good. And I like the starvation, the tusk. I didn't